Alright, off of a day response video. Yeah, I got nothing but contempt. Anyway, so he uses this word arbitrary about 7 zillion times from a moral point of view. Makes some accusations relevant to me and my philosophy. We've already been over this. We've done the asymmetry argument. We've done the, you're an addict, and that is important argument. We've, dissected the fact that it's a psychological mechanism. It's a compulsion to need. That the need is inside the individual. It isn't in the environment. There's no need in the environment until we show up to make one. Well, anyway, so we've already been through all these arguments. He just negates all of that, says that it is arbitrary to recognize sentience as a core value. He even claims that we haven't even done that. He says there is no underlying, and of course we've articulated the underlying. Suffering sucks, harm be bad, and that's the underlying. If you run over somebody with your car, by Kantian terms, you've imposed suffering. Let's say you were drinking or something. And how would you fix it? You'd have no way to fix it. You'd have no way to undo their harm. The best thing you could do is prevent somebody else from running somebody over. Prevent harm. That's a value. So don't play this game that it's arbitrary. There's nothing arbitrary about it. We have totally and extensively explained where the values come from. Just say you don't agree. Okay, fine. And it's clear you don't agree because you're a bigot. You talk as if the only thing that matters on this planet is a human being. You're a hypocrite. Why not? It's okay to put little piggy, in a torture chamber, but little puppy gets pets and comfort. There's no sense to that. There's no logic involved whatsoever. So don't pretend to be logical and rational when you demonstrate none of it and you can articulate and explain none of it. You douchebag.
As far as he's not explaining how his principles of efficiency, how it isn't arbitrary from a moral point of view.
There you go. I mean, I don't even know what to do with that. I mean, I've already explained the word moral can't mean anything to a rational person. Okay, dogma. Unless you're going to say that morality would be based on some sort of principles, and those principles would be based on some sort of logical explanation of value. Now, we've provided you a logical explanation of value, okay, that everything about the sentient construction, everything about its origin and evolution is about the creation of a thing that's decidedly repulsive and negative. It is by its very nature repulsive, avoidance, negative, bad. All of those words are suitably connected to the creation of this state of being that is the whip, the negative state. And that there is this positive state which is no whip. So don't say that it hasn't been explained to you. Don't say that we haven't made the argument. You're just saying, okay, you can't understand carrot and whip, and you certainly can't understand whip and no whip. Because that's really the fundamental truth of the argument. Okay, I don't need to make that argument. I can still make the argument having carrots, real carrots in the world. But I'm going to tell you the truth of your existence is you're whipped and you're not whipped. And that's all there is. There's just bad and less bad. And you think because it's less bad, it's good. But that's a perceptual delusion.
That is, he never provides the means to do the calculation, and
Well, I've said as clearly as possible. First, I don't need any calculation to say you don't have consent, which is a huge problem. Because if you don't have consent, you need perfection. So you're already, the game is over right there. It doesn't need any more articulation or messing with, okay? You're imposing without consent and without competence. So you don't have the competence, a sufficient competence to do something without consent. You can only do something without consent if you're assured of productive action. You can't assure productive action, therefore you can't do it without consent. Not difficult. And that whole element of being able to not create victims, fail safe. This is an obligation of the circumstance. One could argue that nobody would vote for nuclear power unless they thought they were going to achieve fail safe. They wouldn't overtly, most people anyway, say, oh, it's okay if a few people get radiated. You know, because then you're just in the not in my backyard argument, which just demonstrates huge hypocrisy, which violates the don't do unto others. You wouldn't want somebody else recklessly disregarding, you know, catastrophic destruction of your existence. You know, so let's not be hypocrites and say it's okay for me to catastrophically destroy somebody else's life with reckless disregard, and yet if somebody did it to me, I wouldn't find it offensive and annoying and irritating and a violation of morality. So there's nothing arbitrary here.
If we was to suppose there is such a means to calculate the sufficiency, he never extends his argument to explain how it wouldn't be arbitrary.
Well, again, I just can't say it. I've said it in so many videos. Suffering sucks. It's not an arbitrary statement. It's saying it's a negative thing. There are negative sensations we feel that are in and of themselves decidedly negative, and if they could be eliminated, they should be eliminated. Now, the only question is the value of your addiction. And again, we're back to the unneeded need argument, so you can't use that for anything. So I'm just saying the efficiency is dissectable. I'm not going to redo videos I've already done in this video, but they're certainly in those Ephelist videos outlining the basic nature of the philosophy and the nature of the evaluation. And they're certainly in the Benatar argument, which we already went over extensively. So it's just a slanderous accusation for you to sit there and pompously sit there, like you fat pig, and tell me I haven't made the argument. I mean, it's goddamn disgusting, you fuck. It's not arbitrary. If you believe suffering sucks, it's not arbitrary. You crazy shit. Alright, I'll just move ahead. I'd like to play his whole video because every sentence, yeah, I'll play some more because every sentence is a pile of shit.
That is, he would be selecting his own personal goals for himself or humanity.
Again, the goal is to prevent harm. First, do no harm. Second, prevent harm. There. Okay, not complicated. We know what harm looks like. Harm is like decapitation and guts dragging behind you. We all know what it looks like. You don't need a detailed description of every single event. Okay, we know what's on that side of the fence and what's on that side of the fence. And yeah, there's some little sections in the middle. But 90% of the decisions have big, giant, easy distinctions between, oh, that is absolutely horrible. So don't tell me this isn't constructively and had been articulate enough in our description of the detail, and for you to sit there and claim it's arbitrary. It's nowhere close to fucking arbitrary, retard. So anyway, let's move ahead. I really do want to just play the whole thing, but I won't. It's tedious and annoying and brutally slow. Doggy.
Status. Can we agree? I mean, it's kind of a theme I think that it can be led into through various thought experiments, etc. But it's kind of a theme of the Michael Sandel Justice series, that it's taken almost as a premise that things that are arbitrary from a moral point of view are untenable positions.
Yeah, well, whatever. This whole arbitrary from a moral point of view doesn't mean... I mean, how can I say it any clearer? It really doesn't mean anything to me. There's two principles. First, do no harm. Second, prevent harm. Okay, first, don't be destructive. Second, try to be productive. What, you can't understand that principle? Shit.
Because there as Inmendham would try to press about the need for logical certainty in your argument, there is no logical claim to an arbitrary.
Well, again, it's just silly, right? So he's saying it's not certain, in the probabilistic sense anyway, that, you know, I shouldn't go out on the road right now and just kick everybody I see in the ass. I mean, it's logically certain that there's no real prospect of that having any productive effect. That's just going to cause a bunch of hurt asses. So, you know, it's just silly.
Claim, which is just a matter of personal preference, that can't be justified with some underlying principle.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously your bigotry is what falls into that category. Your capacity to treat the little pig dog nice and to treat the actual pig shitty, that hypocrisy is unexplainable, irrational, insane, crazy, stupid, fucked up. You're the one with the gaping holes in your logic, fuckhead. Moving along.
So no, utilitarianism isn't. It's a necessary and useful tool to sort out things from time to time, but it isn't the underlying principle.
And who said it was the underlying principle? It's the fact of the equations, okay? When you start doing the plussing and the minusing, you end up with it. It's an inevitable consequence of doing math. So you come up with less remainder kind of idea. So yeah, if you can make a lower number, that's what you're trying to do. It's not that complicated. So you can't make this argument that because we have a name for doing addition and subtraction, that we're saying that that's what we're doing. That the addition and subtraction is the only thing important. It's not the numbers. No, it's the numbers. You know, utilitarianism means a different thing depending on how you plus and minus the numbers, depending on what value you give to the numbers. And we've already stated what our value is. That we don't think there's much of a distinction between little dog comfort and little pig comfort. These are the simple logical statements being made, and this is the reality of our existence. And again, we have explained that your delusions of pink balloon being comforting and beautiful and wonderful, and you shall chase until you gain, it's a perception in your head. It has nothing to do with the balloon, it just has to do with your brain. But yet, if you see somebody trapped under a car, there's a logic to you walking over there and trying to gain trying to do something to comfort the victim. That's a logical impulse-driven behavior, where chasing the pink balloon has nothing to do with anything logical. It has to do with your personal problem. I mean, it has to do with a need manufactured inside of you, not a need that is recognized to exist in the world. And that's all we're saying, is that the value is what you see when you look at the world, not what you look inside of yourself. Yourself will not tell you the truth. Your psychology will not tell you the truth. Your psychology says cute, cute. It's prejudiced, it's bigoted, it has nothing to do with defining reality. But when you look in the world, then you can see reality. Then you see the truth of the reality.
It may be a truth that value is manifest from sentience. But that being the case, the choosing of valuations and assignments and judgments on those values is entirely arbitrary.
I mean, it's just how where do you go with that? You're saying, okay, you've conceded that, well, sentience may be important somehow, but the fact that there is these decidedly negative, universally, like I said, you can go through all of biology, all of evolution, and you'll find this syndrome of hysterical responses to these negative sensations. And that this negative sensation thing is common. And as I've stated many times, I happen to be conscious. I happen to be doing a consciousness experiment, and I have complete and detailed data on sensations through my own personal experience. And those inform me quite logically, and it's quite consistent with what I see in the rest of the world. So the other consciousnesses appear to be behaving exactly how I would behave in their circumstances. They seem to be screaming and yelling at exactly the times I would be screaming and yelling. So I don't see any inconsistency here. I don't see any problem at all. It seems pretty cut and dry, easy to figure out. So I'm saying from my personal experience, I know I wouldn't want this horror thing or torture thing imposed without good cause. And the point being made is there's no good cause. You can pretend there is, but there isn't. All right, so we jump ahead a little. Come on, computer.
No. But tomorrow, on reflection of the greater good and the utilitarian whole, or, one can say, no, it's not the golden rule, because I can break.
Okay. So in this whole section, he's making some idiotic argument about some sort of inconsistency argument. Somehow there's some evidence of inconsistency or some reason to presume that inconsistency will show up someday. So it's almost like the absolute power corrupts absolutely cliche. This is cliche mush. It doesn't mean anything. You can make the accusation, but I could just make the counter-accusation that any other morality you have is just as subject to the vagaries of how you feel on a particular day. And then Kantian ethics go in the toilet. So I just don't... What's the point of making an accusation of some kind of duplicity or some sort of inaccuracy? I'm going to argue that we know these truths now pretty solid. And the reason why we have made any progress in the world in terms of ethics is because of a recognition of these basic facts, that this is what being human is, and sentience and all these things, and you can't make your profit off somebody else's pain. And little bits of logic like that have finally seeped into the mind of man because he's gotten rid of this baggage of bigotry and religious dogma and doctrine. But we're a long way from home, baby, as they say. But I mean, the underlying principles, you can say that somehow, someday, we're going to sit there and say, oh yeah, mammals aren't like humans. Humans aren't mammals, they're super mammals. Or do some other kind of trickery to pretend that a psychological response isn't a psychological response. That if I take a chimpanzee's baby from it and smash it with a brick, that someday we're going to come up with some kind of story that says her hysterical reaction has nothing to do with any kind of real emotion. Right? That's your accusation, you fucking trolly piece of shit. You just make a vague accusation of some sort of frivolousness or lack of character to the description of value. Just make it suspect. It's wearing a hoodie. It's got chiclets in its pocket. It's a hoodlum out for no good. I mean, you're just bigoted. You're bigoted and you're a cheater in an argument. This is just a grotesque cheat. This is like saying, so, how many times have you beaten your wife, and how often do you molest your kids? And I don't have to defend the fact that you have to prove some sort of inconsistency, fuckhead. I can prove your duplicity. I can prove your bigotry. All right? You haven't proven anything close to giving you a justification for making a claim that somehow there's a vagary to our fundamental principles. Fuck you. Anyway, so he spends a lot of time just doing that crap.
It's against women and, to a certain extent, homosexuality.
Okay, so here he's talking about women and homosexuality. These are look at the great progress we've made. You know, we don't beat kids with clubs, and we don't do this, and we don't do that. And it's at the very time that in the real world, for billions of people on this planet right now, they are going backward. Okay, they are living in a less civilized world. So isn't that the irony of his, look at how wonderful our progress is. We don't enslave people anymore. Aren't we brilliant? I mean, if that's what you're going to put on your report card as your accomplishment, yeah, I'm going to fail you dismally. And you're on the brink of toxic environment. You have driven wages through your open big world philosophy. He talks like that we open borders for some sort of egalitarian purpose, when all we did it for is to open the borders to desperation so we could exploit the fuck out of people. I mean, it's just the propaganda built into your argument is suffocatingly stinky.
You got the right to marry and so.
Oh, well, anyway, like I said, it just goes on to these little trivial accomplishments of mankind, while mankind is torturing in industrial farms billions of sentient organisms every day. Some progress, fuckhead. I mean, if you were an alien species, I think if I created an alien species and described exactly what we have done, and that's the alien species accomplishment, you'd probably be able to figure out that, oh wait, you mean they still enslave the sub-gragoids? The sub-gragoids, they still enslave them in cages and barbecue them on the weekend? Yeah, you'd kind of get it when you couldn't tell much difference between a gragoid and a bibloid. And somehow the bliboids are being barbecued and the grabloids are being petted cute puppy. Yeah, you'd see the hypocrisy, you'd see the duplicity, and you'd say, boy, that civilization absolutely reeks of vomit.
I think the progress, which I've alluded to about, giving the women the vote.
Wow, wow, we really scored a big goal there, man. Well, wow. Yeah, this is like the Special Olympics. Oh, the retard didn't poo his pants. Wow, let's give him a pink balloon and a goddamn trophy. I mean, what a joke.
Aryan principle, i.e., can any gain that mankind has made be ascribed to some suffering in the short term?
Well, this whole suffering in the short term argument is again another bogus argument where you apply a double standard, because every day we torture animals in medical laboratories for our gain. So that doesn't go anywhere. Again, I could give all the descriptions of all the corners that are cut every day, where buildings are built and they fall on people, where all kinds of shit happens, and we know it's going to happen. It's not like we don't know it's going to happen. We know that's the price you pay for your, economy, to make it cheap enough, to make your profit big enough. That's the price of profit. You know, lots of corners get cut. You know, so and again, this making your victory lapse on the argument that we cleaned up some of the mess, and that's all you're basically saying. Look, we cleaned up some of this fucking putrid mess we made, so doesn't that mean it's all okay? So you make the mess, you clean up a tiny piece of it, and then you say, well, look how great we are. We cleaned up that whole... Like, we don't overtly on the street punch women in the face. So yeah, we've done all we need to do, haven't we? Isn't that enough of an accomplishment? We got rid of some of the broken that we created. I mean, it's just a nothing, vacuous. You're vacuous. So instead of arbitrary, you want to throw the word arbitrary at me. I'll throw the word vacuous at you. You are a vacuous, vacant-brained, silly person who's not even connected to any kind of reality or framing for your morality besides, well, I read it in the Bible once. You know, and do unto others as you have others do unto you. Does that mean that if I know you suck, you know, that I should apply my judgment? You know, if you know, that's what it really comes down to, right? We could all be guilty at some point of lynching somebody, right? Because, well, we honestly thought he did it. He did meet 9 out of the 10 criteria, and so we made a mistake. Now, would you say, if you were the victim, obviously you're going to say, that's not what I would do unto others, is it? Or is it? You know, I mean, there's points where you can only do the best you can do. I don't think any of you people are doing the best you can do. I think you're trying to evade responsibility and accountability. And that's the key word here, is accountability, right? You know, if you don't have consent, then you have to have accountability. I mean, without consent, you have to have accountability. And how are you going to account? How are you going to make up for your trespasses? By preventing other trespasses. So, I mean, that's the only game there is here, is cleaning up messes. There's no positive game. So just as you've elucidated the accomplishments of mankind, what are they? Oh, they undid some of the harm. They corrected for some of the harm. They didn't accomplish anything truly positive. They just got rid of some of the negative. Some of the negative. Some portion of the negative. And that's just not nearly good enough. Especially when you're the ones that created the mess in the first place. So anyway, really pitifully bad video. And, yeah. I mean, I really don't want to go more than half an hour. Yeah, but I mean, there was a lot of little points that could be argued with in terms of, you know, just the fact that this is in the context of already going through this in detail about the fact that there is this thing called harm, and that there is a concept called addiction, and that there is a concept of need that is generated, the individual's need versus the need in the efficiency of the game itself. Like each individual pawn needs not to be killed, but frankly, the game is the pawns have to be sacrificed. So again, you're not paying any respect to the previous conversations, which now you've just made a waste of time because you've reverted to the simplistic argument of just saying somehow I don't see the foundation for this ethics based on sentient experience. That sentient experience has a qualitative reality, and it's the only game in town, really. Nothing else in the universe can possibly mean anything. I mean, do you have a response to that? How could anything in the universe possibly mean anything if it didn't affect a sentient being? Explain to me the universe. No sentience in the universe. Now explain to me what it could possibly be doing that could matter. How could it do anything good or bad if there wasn't a sentience to be impacted? And again, frankly, I'm going to argue that the only thing anything can ever do is be bad and less bad. Value is an intrinsically and fundamentally negative concept, just like electricity and these other things. It's a one-way. There is no positive. There's just negative. Unfortunately, it's just the way it turned out. The only door you can open is trouble. There's no other doors. There's trouble and chaos and mess and foobar. I mean, all you can do is open stupid doors, because that's the nature of sensation. It's a mechanism for controlling organisms and obliging them to be menaces to the environment, to parasitically suck its blood. That's the function of this thing. And consistent with that function is a futility in your pursuit of less pain. Your pursuit of less pain by creating painables is so stupid, it's oxymoronic. So anyway, enough.